my fellow comic book collectors, it's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is the Wednesday video where I answer your questions. I actually have to clarify with a couple of these questions. There's some really interesting ones that I'm going to have to get into and kind of clarify, set the record straight. So let's get into it. The first question comes from Troy Evans, who wrote, "Have you started stacking your slabs horizontally?" Well, I've always been, just to clarify, I've always been stacking my slabs horizontally just because that's the easiest way to put them into the shelving units behind me. Generally, I stack them about 15 to 22 high. That's how high they are in stacks. How many slabs can safely be stacked horizontally without putting a lot of pressure on the bottom slab? Is there a shelving system you know for stacking comics horizontally within a long box or short box? Okay, so as I said, about 22 kind of, it seems to be the good number for how many you can stack. I haven't seen any damage on the bottom slab from stacking it that high, but you know, be reasonable. Don't stack it like 40 high or anything like that, because you will crack the bottom slab. However, this is where I needed to do the clarification. You don't have to worry about books being displayed vertically or being stored vertically, because generally the amount of stress that you're putting on the staple from that vertical position is really, really minor. Actually, a more dangerous thing about stacking your books horizontally, especially horizontally, is what you can have is kind of a pressing effect, where if you have all your comics sort of stacked horizontally, it actually puts a lot of pressure on the spines. And that's because what's happening is, if you store them all the same direction, or they're all like this way, for example, well, what's happening is you're going to create like almost like a fold along the bend along where the spine is. And the reason that happens is where the staples are is a little bit of more space on the comic. And what ends up happening is, over time, you'll get like sort of an indent from where the staple is a bit thicker than the rest of the book comic. Other thing that can happen is you get like a bit of like dust shadow can form if it's exposed to light. There's other weird things with stacking horizontally that I actually don't recommend stacking your books horizontally. The best way to stack your books is actually, or store your books, is where you alternate because of the spine, as I said, alternate like front to back, situation where you have two covers facing each other, the next two facing each other, but the backs face the back. So it'd be like this way, and then you have one facing outwards, then you have one like that, next one facing outwards, and so forth. That way the spines are alternating sides so that they're evenly getting pressure. So really, all of this probably is all minor, but the point is, stacking horizontally is actually dangerous unless you alternate the spine orientations, and it's not really that essential. It's better just to store them in a regular box. People have been storing comics in regular boxes for a long, long time, and they still get 9/8. So ultimately, not to worry about it, okay? So don't worry about it. I do store my slabs horizontally, though. Okay, next question comes from K. Munin. On your February 7th live stream, you never got to show the second round of Zombie Tramp books. What were these books we didn't get to see? Do you think Zombie Tramp will ever be produced by a comic company again like Action Labs? Well, I brought the ones that I didn't show. Actually, I was going to go one more round, but it was kind of running late, so I didn't get to show them. These are the ones that I was going to show, but and I'll show them right now. But I don't think Zombie Tramp is going to be produced by another comic company for at least a little while, because it seems like Dan Mendoza wants to keep the control over it. And the only thing I can see is him doing collabs with other publishers, like he did with like Lady Death and stuff like that, with Jim. Is it not Jim? No, it's the guy that produces Lady Death, and Evil Ernie and all those ones. But that guy. I want to say Capullo, but yeah. But the point is, those I do see those kind of collabs happening, but not actually being produced by those companies, if that makes sense. So here are the books that I meant to show but didn't get a chance to show. So these are all like Zombie Tramp, either 57 or 58. So this is number 58. And I got them all signed by Dan Mendoza, so you'll see that at the very bottom. And they're just variants of those two issues. I can't show the nude ones. I have all the nude ones as well, but these are the non-nude variants. I kind of like this one. It's got a nice little nuclear explosion going on in the background. So, I mean, they're pretty spicy without having to be nude. So hope you enjoy them anyways. So this is all issue 58. So Virgin variant. I thought this one was cute. I'm not bad, I'm just drawn that way. It's like the Pulp Fiction version, I guess. And Nightmare on Elm Street kind of version. That's 57. Another 57. And 57 is kind of a key issue because it's where Dan Mendoza gets the rights back to Zombie Tramp. I like this one. It's kind of like a Hollywood celebrity kind of thing. And she's got the very disturbing intestines, but oh well. And then we got this one. You'll probably this is the stacked edition. It's like quite a thick book, and it's Zombie Tramp 57. And then some of the other ones. So that stacked edition one's a little rarer. And these are the lenticular ones. I'm not sure if you can see it. She changes her hair color from white to black. And I'm not sure what this one is. I think it's just a shiny one. I thought it was a lenticular. Yeah, sort of a shiny, oily one. And I really like this one. An homage to House of Secrets 92. Another one. That's the Cheeto one. And I got this one. I think this is... I forgot who did this one. They're a little bit out of order, so forgive me for that. Okay, so let's do the last few. Got this one. I think this one's kind of cute. Brains on the menu. This is Bill Mackey, I believe. That's another one. This is the normal skin variant. And then here's two rare ones. I don't know if I got a chance to show these ones, but this is like the trade paperback. Quite rare, actually, to find. You can see it's quite thick. Sort of a rare Zombie Tramp. And the last one, this is really, really rare. There's only 200 of these. This is the Dan Mendoza 2018 sketchbook. And it has like all the different characters that he did. But this was limited to just 200 copies. So quite rare. So that's my Zombie Tramp. I hope you enjoyed that. There's a whole bunch more that I could show, but they're actually buried. So, but these were the ones that I had planned for the show that I didn't get a chance to show. So I hope you enjoyed those. Antonio wrote, I enjoy collecting comics with Mark Jeweller's inserts. My best one is New Mutants 98. Can you please tell which are the top 10 most valuable comics with Mark Jeweller's or National Diamond sales inserts? So I'm only going to do Mark Jeweller's ones because they're a little easier to look up. The National Diamond sales inserts were a little harder to find, but these are the top 10 from what I can figure. What I can figure are the top 10 most valuable Mark Jeweller's ones. And if you're not familiar with the Mark Jeweller's insert, it's basically like it was an insert that they put into the comics that went out to the military bases. Basically, it was diamond rings that were being offered, and you know, you could order them from on these military bases. So these were comics that were only distributed to U.S. military bases, making them much rarer than standard comics. Usually about 1/10 as common in terms of numbers, maybe even less in certain cases. But the point is, the Mark Jeweller's, you can usually see, if you look at the very top of the comic and you see like a blue line, you'll see that that is a Mark Jeweller's insert. Mark Jeweller's books generally ran from the 70s into the 90s, and they can be quite pricey. So generally the way they go is the more pricey ones are key issues. So a Mark Jeweller's with a key, obviously going to sell for more. So a good example of that is DC Comics Presents 26, which sells for about $2,500. The regular version in a 9/8 sells for about $800. So about 3 times more than the 9/8 regular edition sells for. So that's number 10 on the list. Number 9 is Hulk 271, which goes for about $2,500 in a 9/8 or 9/6 actually 9/6, whereas the regular similar grade goes for about $300, so about 10 times. So as I said, the rule of thumb is anywhere from 2 times to 10 times. That's how much of a difference the Mark Jeweller's insert can actually add to the value of the comic. Number 8 on the list is 8.5 Amazing Spider-Man 129, sold for $2,900 in a Mark Jeweller's, whereas the regular edition goes for about $1,900. So it's not quite double on that one, about 1.5 on that one. Number 7 on the list is New Mutants 87, in a 9/4, goes for about $4,000, whereas the regular edition goes for $150. So just like crazy difference in price on that one. But yeah, that's what they are. A 9/6 Daredevil 168 goes for about $3,000. The regular edition goes for about $2,000. 9/2 Tomb of Dracula number 10 goes for about $4,000, where the regular edition in a 9/2 goes for about $2,500. a 9.6, New Mutants 98. So if you that's the one you have, good one to have because it's high up on the list, number 5 on the list. Goes for or actually number 4 on the list. Goes for about $5,000 and a 9.6. And in the regular edition of that book goes for about $1,000. So, it's a lot cheaper. A 6.0 copy of Werewolf by Night 32 goes for about $4,000, whereas the regular edition at that grade goes for about $700. So, Werewolf by Night, another good one to look for. A 9.8 copy of Uncanny X-Men 266, the first Gambit, goes for about $9,000, whereas the same 9.8 Blue Label goes for about $590. So huge difference in value for that one. And the one that goes for probably the most, the only one I could find in terms of pricing, was a 6.5 Hulk 181, which goes for about $8,000. And so in a high grade, it would probably be like 10 to 20,000 or 30,000. But in a 6.5 Blue Label, it goes for about 3,000. So that one goes for the most at the high grades. So those are the big ones. Those are the top 10 that I could find. I did a lot of research to try to figure out what the lists were. There's no list that I could find online. I just had to look them up. But generally what you do is if you can find a Mark Jewelers and it's a key, it's a good grab. People will pay a premium for that Mark Jewelers insert. Hope you enjoyed that. Next question comes from I Like What I Buy. Do you have a feature book from McKay Publishing? I love the early Phantom covers. I actually don't have any of the feature books, but I do have a few kind of from Dan McKay. Dan McKay is the same one that did King Feature Syndicate, which is where Popeye and Henry is from, and Captain and the Kids. A whole bunch of characters come from. I think even Tarzan was in. Was it Tarzan? No, not Tarzan. Was it Flash Gordon? One of those ones. I forget. I'm trying to remember all the different characters. But here is one that I have. That's Fox. That's McKay Publishing. Even says McKay Publishing on it. David McKay Publishing. And this is Ace Comics number 1. This is actually the first appearance of a whole bunch of characters. First appearance of Jungle Jim, Crazy Cat, Blondie, Ripley's Believe It or Not. So kind of a fun one. I'm a big fan of Ripley's Believe It or Not. Also like Blondie, so it's kind of cool to get her first appearance as well. So this is kind of a big book. This was one of my big grails that I picked up this year, so I was quite happy. So from 1937. The interesting thing about McKay Publishing is it was actually one of the first companies to produce comics back in 1935. So pretty cool company. Another book that I have from McKay is another Ace. This is Ace. I forget what issue number this is actually. Does it say? It doesn't say, of course. But this is Ace. Ace number 76. And this is actually the very first appearance of Captain Tootsie. You ever see those Tootsie ads at the back of comics? Well, this is where Captain Tootsie made his first appearance. So if you like Tootsie Rolls, this is the comic for you. So Ace Comics number 76. So those are the few that I have. I have a whole bunch of Popeye, but they're generally done through Dell. So it's weird that way. I don't really have that many Fox. The King. I have some King as well, but yeah, but mostly Dell. So thought that might be interesting. I've been actually trying to get the first appearance of the Phantom, and actually the first cover appearance of the Phantom, like where he's on the cover. But I've always been outbid, so not much luck there. Okay, next question comes from Jeffrey. What would you do if I sang out a tune? What is your favorite Beatles appearance in comics? Well, I actually, I'm one of those people that really likes to get the first appearance of a character or person in comics. I've been trying to get this book, but I don't have it yet. And it's My Little Margie, number 54, which is actually the first appearance of the Beatles in comics. They're on the cover. It comes back from 1964. But when I ever think of the Beatles, I actually think of this other comic. This other comic is the one that always comes to mind when I think of the Beatles in comics. And it's just because it's such a goofy one. This is Strange Tales number 130. And it says, "Meet the Beatles." And you got the Thing kind of wearing like one of those mop tops, pretending to be the Beatles. So I always thought that was funny. So and I believe that's the Human Torch as well as the Beatles. So I just think it's funny to see them as the Beatles. So this is the one I always think of. So that's my personal favorite. But I also really would like to get that My Little Margie number 54. That's the key issue. Next question comes from Adrift. It seems to me that pulps are growing in collectability and value. I know that you primarily collect comics, but do you think pulps are a good long-term investment? As inexpensive as many of them are right now, which titles do collectors gravitate towards? Personally, I find Startling Stories covers amazing looking, and I'm always surprised how affordable they are. They are really affordable. So the thing is, the problem with pulps, good and bad. Here's the good thing. Good thing, amazing covers. Okay, so they have really great covers. Strangely, a lot of pulps were saved. And they were usually put into bookcases where they were just sort of, put into the bookcases and stacked and stored for a long, long time. And a lot of them actually survived. That is why what happened, and I was specking on pulps for a little bit, and I kind of said this, was that you needed to invest in pulps before they got graded. Once the grading got put in, I kind of saw the following happening, that there would be a huge spike in price and then a huge drop. And that's actually what happened because people were kind of speculating, and they finally felt, oh, this is the time. Pulps are finally going to get the recognition that they deserved. And a lot of dealers were kind of overly pricing the pulps, especially at the very beginning of when they were getting graded. So a few people got early access to grading, and they were listing the pulps at 5 or 6 times what they normally would sell for where they weren't slabbed. So those early slabs were actually really, really pricey. Since then, you can actually get some graded pulps almost the same price as the raw. Really didn't perform that well. However, there are some exceptions. There are some pulps that are very desired, and I'll give you a few examples of that. Weird Tales, definitely desired title, especially the Margaret Brundage covers, very desired, and they still seem to be going up in value. Anything with spicy, so there's spicy westerns, spicy adventures. There's a whole bunch of spicy titles. They're a little bit more spicy. They're like from the early 30s into the 50s. Those ones can go for a considerable amount of money because of the more adult nature to them. One of the bad things about pulps is the pulpy nature of them, that they are there's no art inside. So it's really the cover that's holding them up in value. So some of those Startling Tales do go for a bit if they have a really great good girl cover or kind of interesting cover, very similar things that Golden Age comic collectors look for. They look for morbid or sexy cover, or maybe semi-nude cover. Things like that will increase the value. But generally, there's a lot of those books that are available. So generally, you can kind of find them fairly affordably. Some other titles that I've noticed have done quite well. I'm just trying to think. Trying to think of some good ones. Like some of the ones with the shadow, Spider Comics, those ones have done quite well. So there's a few that, you have to kind of search around. I'm not a pulp expert, but, I've dabbled in it. I do have a few. I have probably about 200 pulps in my collection. Maybe a little bit less than that, but around 200. And I have maybe about 20 graded ones now. I picked up as I saw like an opportunity to buy a cheap pulp graded comic, and they have great covers. So what I'd recommend is, if you can find them where they're graded and present really nicely, pick them up. And if you can pick them up cheaply, that's the key thing. Because I do see that there is potential there because of the artistic element to them. So that's my advice about that. Next question comes from Matt Likes Comics. And this one is a really interesting question. What do you do with a drunken sailor? I'm not sure what you do with a drunken sailor, but also, why is Bluto sometimes called Brutus in Popeye? Well, this one required a little bit of research. So what happened was, after the theatrical release of Popeye, the cartoon series ceased in 1957. So they basically ran from, I don't know, like the 30s all the way up to 1957. He was always referred to as Bluto, okay? However, they changed the name because they thought that they didn't have the rights to the character. Because what they believed was believed by Fox Features, that Paramount Pictures, that distributes Fleischer Studios, the distributors of Fleischer Studios, later called Famous Studios, they believe that the rights were owned by, that they owned the rights to Bluto, okay? So they thought, oh, okay, if we change the name, we can get around this copyright thing. Okay, so, but the funny thing is, Fox Features actually owned the rights to Bluto. They just didn't do the proper research. So they changed the name, thinking that they didn't have the rights to the character, but they actually did have the rights to the character. So so they reinvented the character to avoid the copyright. And you actually see Brutus appearing in from 1960 to 1962 in Popeye the Sailor television cartoons. And they kind of changed his physical appearance a little bit, made him pudgy, made him like, more like obese rather than muscular, just to kind of, again, get around these copyright things, which they didn't have to get around. People make mistakes. And actually, it was for a long time, Brutus and Bruto were kind of accepted as the same character. However, in 1988, Ocean Comics produced a Popeye comic where they had Brutus and Bruto as being the same character, not the same character, twins, same person, well, similar person, being two twin brothers. So that was like a twist on it where they had them as twins. The Popeye comic strip at the time had been drawn by Hy Esman, and generally only features Brutus, but also added Bluto as Brutus, the twin brother, in several 2008 to 2009 strips. So just so you know. So even though it's the same character, they tried to do this twin thing, and they actually even had it in the comic strips in newspapers from 2008 to 2009. I think they even did it again recently. So who knows where they're going to go with that other name. But that's the reason. It was a mistake that they made where they didn't know that they had the rights to the character. Okay. Next question comes from Jerry Penix. I bought a book that is a file copy, and it came with a signing out card stapled to it. Should I take it off? No, do not take that off. leave that card stapled onto the book. The reason being that sign out book for the file copy, though it kind of detracts from maybe the overall appearance of the book, it adds a huge historical value to the book. And if they actually signed this card, you might actually have some famous signatures of people that worked at the company. So could be actually adding a lot more value to the comic. So definitely do not take that card off. It adds a little bit of provenance to the book as being a file copy. And, it's kind of cool. So leave it. Don't touch it. Last question comes from AJ Guez. And this year I'd like to pick up the first appearance of Lex Luthor. The public seems to support Action Comics 23 as the first appearance, and its price represents that, even though I think it's still affordable. You think that Superman 4, much less expensive book, as Lex's first appearance. What is the full case for this, and why is Action 23 so much more expensive? Part 2. Has there been many first appearances that exist today, such as Stephen's most famous Sandman's first appearance, that are out there that are misattributed? Okay, so let's deal with the Action Comics Superman 4 issue first. So just like Stephen did, way back in the day when Stephen did his research, you actually had to write to the different patent houses or wherever this information was stored, to find out the publication dates and the newsstand release dates. And so he did that, and it was like a big correspondence that he had to do. Nowadays, we have the internet. The internet makes it so much easier. So there's the Grand Comics database, where you can basically find out all of the provenance and history of comics and find out when they were released, when they hit the newsstand, when they were published, all that kind of stuff. Now, Action Comics was published and hit the newsstand almost at the same time. Like the publishing date and the date that they hit the newsstand is considered the same date, which is October. So it's not October. Ignore that. February 23rd, 1940. So February 23rd, 1940. Okay. Which almost makes it 75 years. Was it 75? 1940. 95 years ago. Like 95 years ago in a few days. So happy birthday. So that is, remember, February 23rd, okay? That's when publishing date and the newsstand release date happened, okay? So February 23rd, 1940. Superman 4 hit the newsstands on February 15th. So 1 week, actually 8 days earlier in 1940. So Superman 4 came out first on the newsstands. Also, the publication date was actually earlier. It was back in January 23rd of 1940. So almost a full month before Action Comics 23. Okay? So this data was not available when CGC originally, or like was not commonly known before CGC declared Action Comics 23 as being the first appearance of Superman. So what happened was the market said, oh, this is the first appearance of Lex Luthor. We got to get this book, Action 23. All the money went to Action 23, and that's why it's a more expensive book, by far more expensive. However, it is not the first appearance of Lex Luthor. Superman 4 is the legitimate first appearance of Lex Luthor. And I read Superman 4. There's multiple stories with Lex Luthor inside, and he's referred to as Luthor. So he's red-haired. It is the first full appearance. It's not just one cameo or anything. It's a full story where he's the villain, and he's causing a whole bunch of mayhem for Superman. So Superman 4 is the first appearance of Lex Luthor. And also it's a kind of a cool book because earlier versions of Superman, 1 through 3, actually were reprints. They would reprint stories from Action and, with Superman stories. Well, Superman 4 is really the first book where it's all unique original content. So another cool thing about Superman 4, very underrated book. I actually just picked up a copy of it. It is coming in the future, so you'll see that in a future unboxing as well. So that was one of my top 10 books to pick up this year, and I managed to get it. So definitely, if you want to get that true first appearance, go for Superman 4. Now, other books that have, or other characters that have similar things would be like Gambit, where he appears first in the annual rather than X-Men 266. Hellboy is one of those weird ones where there's like him appearing in weird little spots. Like he appears in X-Men like on the poster. But there's earlier versions than that. Bone is another one where the Bone comic book is actually not the first appearance of Bone. There's actually Tales from the Lantern, which is earlier, which has Bone in it. What other characters can I think of? Savage Dragon. There's like a earlier book with Savage Dragon in it. Walking Dead has an earlier book than Walking Dead #1. There's like a bunch that are like listed as being the first appearance in such and such a book, but really there's earlier books with them in it. So yeah, it's one of those things where the market has almost decided that this is where the first appearance is. A big one would be like Wolverine, where Wolverine appears actually in 180, and it's 181 that everyone buys. Even Venom, which everyone thinks is 300, well, he actually appeared in 299. So there's like a whole bunch of these kind of characters where they made their first appearance earlier, where the market has sort of picked another book as being the first appearance. One of the tricks that they sometimes do is say, oh, this is the first full appearance of the character. A good example of that is Red Sonja, which I talked about previously, where Red Sonja in Conan 23, she actually appears throughout the book, like multiple panels, and that's considered the cameo. But 24, where she's on the cover, is considered to be the first full appearance, even though, as I said, she appeared in 23 through multiple pages. It's the market. I'm one of those people that ends up getting both if I can. I like to get that true first appearance, though. So hope you enjoyed that. Thanks again for watching. If you guys have a question for me, put it in the comments below and I'll answer it next week. So yeah, stay tuned. And I do a little bit of research with all of these videos. So, feel free to ask me whatever you want. Okay, thanks again. Bye for now.